Ragnarok is finally upon us. Okay, now I have a little bit more of a fire lit up underneath me, especially considering I guess you could say the weekend or the opening part of the week that I've had, which I'll get into right now in a slight second. But welcome, guys, to I guess you could say the penultimate. Is it the penultimate or second to penultimate? I think this is episode 8 of this 4th season of the DarkspiderCast. So welcome. Gonna keep the introductory portion of this episode short, only because I did have a good chunk of stories, of video game stories, lined up, but two more got added. I guess you could also kind of call them just one big one kind of companion piece. Just got added to the dock. I am so glad that I woke up to these news prior to recording the podcast, recording it a little bit late this week, only because of the 4th of July weekend, the 4th of July event, but also because of other events that have been kind of preceding it. But I'm so glad that I actually managed to just hold out just a little longer for this piece of news to finally break and to give us something to really, really talk about. And you kind of already have a guess as to what that is, judging by that intro. Before we get to that, however, of course, I have just a little bit of a brief introduction here and also a pretty girthy what I've been playing segment. However, I unfortunately do not have any kind of reviews for any brand new movies or even a new episode of Ms. Marvel because unfortunately, and I don't know what's going on, I don't know, I'm gonna have to talk to her, but basically, I'm still behind, now officially 2 episodes behind on Ms. Marvel, because initially it was just going to be episode 4 that I was behind on, but now, by the time you're probably listening to this, episode 5, which is technically the penultimate episode of the first season of Ms. Marvel, or the series, if it's only going to be a one-off, is already kind of out on Disney+. So the goal is to go see Thor Love and Thunder this Thursday. I will be spending the night at her place because she's off both Thursday and Friday, the day of Thor and then the day afterwards. So I figured, okay, well, we both have nothing to do either days, so I might as well spend the night. We're probably going to play some games or whatever. Stop with the thinking. And then either that night or the next day, we will then kill those 2 Ms. Marvel episodes. So it's possible that you guys will get a double helping of Ms. Marvel reviews next week. That is if it doesn't account also for the finale. I don't know if it's going to be like a late episode next week. I don't know. But I'm banking that next week for sure you'll get my reviews of episodes 4 and 5. Possibly may include 6 as well. We shall see. I don't know. But right now, I know that I'm a little behind on that. I'm also behind on Stranger Things. I have not watched anything of season 4, which I think I need to rectify as soon as possible, only because, not even because I'm in a huge rush to watch Stranger Things. That's not the problem. It's the problem is people fucking spoiling it when they're thinking that they're being subtle, and in reality they're not. You know, for example, without going into, obviously no spoilers here. No spoilers for me, for sure, but I pretty much have an idea of what happens to a particular character in season 4, judging by the way people talk about this character and they're posting photos of this character. I'm kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, I kind of, that kind of seals the deal now, don't it? So I'm a little jaded by that, and that's ultimately one of the driving forces of me wanting to watch Stranger Things, really, outside of just simply wanting to watch it because I'm hyped for it. You know what I'm saying? It kind of diffuses that a little bit. Plus, I'm coming up here on the mid-season finale of Better Call Saul, and I know that new episodes don't come back until August 15th, so I got a little bit of a gap there in the middle, which you could argue could be filled in by Stranger Things, but considering how meaty each episode is, especially those last 2, I'm kind of like, I still want to put it off, and I would rather get Mandalorian Season 2 out of the way, sandwiched in between there. So, I don't know, a lot to kind of think about as far as the TV show backlog, because there is quite an awful lot of good shows out there right now. I will admit to that. But I also wanted to wish you guys, or not really wish you guys, but hope that you all had a pretty exceptional, or at least a well-balanced and pretty decent 4th of July weekend, even though technically speaking 4th of July was on Monday. I know a lot of people already started to blast out fireworks over the weekend leading into Monday. I for the most part, had a pretty decent one. On the actual day of 4th of July, Monday, I pretty much gamed and created stuff and content and got the finishing touches on the Tuesday video for the niche channel for the first half of the day. And then once my girlfriend got out of work and headed home, her family were cooking burgers and sausages. But they pretty much had a cookout, except it was just the immediate family. It wasn't like a big thing. So I went over, ate a burger, her dad's custom burgers that are actually pretty damn good, and just chilled with them for the rest of the night. Although there were some awkward exchanges amongst the family. Thankfully, me and the girlfriend were secure. We were golden, but things out externally were kind of awkward and weird, and both me and my girlfriend were just kind of exchanging looks like, what the hell's going on? So it's just like, so one of the many reasons as to why I personally don't like family events, because sometimes things have a tendency to feel a little forced. Why? Because family, right? I'm so over that shit. I'm like, life is too short to be spending it in these awkward moments here that you would rather be on the moments you generally want to be in. You get what I'm saying? So but outside of that, I had good food, I had great company with my girlfriend, and overall I actually pretty enjoyed my evening. I like came home feeling pretty satisfied, took a shower, and for the rest of the night I was pretty much just able to coast and play one of the games I'll be talking about during the what I've been playing segment. The only other thing that I want to divulge before we get into that segment is that I'm also trying to figure out what's been going on with me on a physical level, because outside of Monday, on Sunday, when I was on my way to the gas station to put in gas, and then from there I was going to go to the gym. I don't know what happened. I don't know if maybe I had like a mini panic attack, mini anxiety attack, but I started feeling disoriented, kind of dizzy, and like just like I was pretty much hit with vertigo and this kind of like weak feeling all over my body and my head or whatever, that I'm like, I should probably not be driving. And it got bad enough that I actually had to pull over and just kind of center myself and just kind of talk to myself too. That kind of like reaffirmation sort of thing where I had to like center myself, metaphorically and physically, and just be like, hey, you're good. So I'm trying to kind of figure out exactly what was going on right there, because a couple of scenarios here. One, it could be stress, just metamorphosizing into a physical altercation going on with my body, which stands to reason, because finally, let's just put it this way. My bank finally sent me an alert saying, hey, you actually have a balance that's completely underneath the minimum that people usually have in their bank accounts. We just thought we'd let you know. And I'm like, I know. I sent a payment to the phone bill. And that's why I got the alert. So the alert coming in is not surprising. It was just the fact that I was reading it that was just, like I said, causing this like subconscious kind of stressor. That, and knowing that there's still more bills coming this month, and then of course the next month. And then I was going over my head what needs to be done in order to maybe like return some stuff so I can get some money put back into the account, what I can maybe kind of move around. How is the girlfriend going to be able to help, if she's going to be able to share with anything like that. I'm even trying not to do it right now and not try to overwhelm myself with right now. And I was quite literally doing this in my head when I started to feel that anxiety attack coming on while I was driving. Plus, I was driving. I was, I was technically speaking multitasking. And because of that, I guess I just had a bit of an episode. Now, outside of that, there's still a couple of moments here and there since Sunday, that I've been feeling kind of weird, but not as bad as I was in that moment, in that episode. And it's because of that, it makes me go, okay, one of two things. Either A, like I said, it was an anxiety episode of some kind, or, in my opinion, what I consider to be the worst case scenario, I might have COVID, or I might have something that I might have picked up from a barbecue cookout family friend gathering that I did go to on Saturday. For one of my friend's birthday. Who's also my friend? I don't know who I'm kidding. It's just that the closer association is the mutual friend that we got. I went to their barbecue cookout, family friend gathering. Um, and overall, I had a great time. I really did. Like, I had a great time the entirety of the way. I was able to kind of pick up my spirits a little bit, because when I got there, my spirits weren't exactly at the highest, because again, going back to the stressors, losing out on money, I think I got a good batch of like rejection letters from some more jobs that day. So spirits were low, but I think but at least being around friends, were able to kind of kick it up a notch that night. That I did once, similar to Monday. I had a good time, and I went home, feeling pretty good. But it is a family friend gathering, and there's also some acquaintances there that I don't normally often see. I don't often know where they've been at, and they don't know where they've been at or who they've had contact with. So what I'm trying to say is that there's always the possibility that something could go around. And there's also kids, kids that are just constantly like touching shit. So, there's different factors that could potentially play a little bit into the whole, like, is there a strain of COVID here that I don't know about? And I am vaccinated, so maybe it's possible that the vaccine is fighting it right now, and that's probably why I feel off, why I got a little disoriented on Sunday. Who knows? I don't know. I'll give it a couple of extra days here to see if I can kind of center myself. Most importantly, if I could kind of get myself reaffirmed before Thor: Love and Thunder. Because I would really, really like to watch that movie without any inconveniences. But who am I kidding? I know how my life plays out. Who am I fucking joking? Anyways, yeah, I just, physically haven't been doing well. And this is actually one of the reasons why I recently shot a reassessment video that quite possibly might already be going up on the niche channel by the time that this episode also debuts as well, because there's just, like I said, so many things going on this week as far as like Thor: Love and Thunder. Me and the girlfriend are gonna go and check that out, and then other videos, and me applying to jobs, and then I'm spending the night. So once I leave for the movie, I won't be coming back until the next day, so etc. etc. And so, God, where was I going with this? Basically, there's just so much going on that is just kind of piling on top. That's just very difficult to know exactly what goes down with your own body, right? And with your own thoughts. And so all of these different things kind of got poured into that reassessment video. That's, like I said, probably going to be going up by now. Oh, excuse me. Quick yawn attack. Yawn attack. I'm so sorry about that. But essentially, that video was pretty much the announcement that I'm going to be going on a little bit of a 2-week break from the niche channel. First week, and all the details will be enclosed in that video. So if you guys want to check that out, the link's going to be in the description for the niche channel. Whether you're watching this on the separate YouTube channel that's dedicated just for the Dark Spider podcast, or if you're listening to this on your podcast platform, the description should still have the link for the niche channel. You can check out the reassessment video there. It's probably going to be the most recent video that has been posted. And basically in that video, I break down what's been going on, as far as me not having a job, me having my anxiety attacks, me not doing so well as far as health, but also trying to reformat and restructure the channel so that it can hopefully do better and perform better, because admittingly, it just hasn't been performing all that great. The last few videos that I've been posting, with varying degrees of minimal success, after a little while, they just kind of teeter off and go back into that 7 out of 10 to 9 out of 10 to 10 out of 10 ranking, with a lot of more of those gray down arrows as opposed to the green rising ones. So all those things combined, it made me want to make that reassessment video to just kind of announce that I'm going to be taking a break from YouTube for about 2 weeks, and then the first week will be a legitimate break, not editing anything, not shooting anything, not doing anything like that, just focusing on myself. And then the second week, I won't be publishing, but I will be getting back into the swing of things of recording, filming, batch recording, restructuring with a new style, a new format, but still delivering the content, still putting it together so that hopefully for the remainder of July, and at least maybe the first couple of weeks of August, we'll be set. So we'll see where that kind of goes on with that. But basically, that's kind of what's been unfolding ever since the last episode on a personal level. And I just kind of wanted to disclose on that, aside from also the games that I've been playing. So last week, I mentioned that there was a game I was playing, but I didn't really want to talk about it in the What I've Been Playing segment just yet, because I thought to myself, okay, well, it's actually a little bit on the short side. I had already spent a little too much time talking about Mafia 2, so I might as well punt it over to the next week. And I'm kind of glad that I did, because now I get to talk about it with a game that I technically have not finished, but I'm on the cusp of. Prior to that, though, I played and beat in its entirety since last week's episode. Tell me why. So, tell me, yeah, they knew that the song was gonna be a fucking thing when this game came out. But anyways, it's a new point-and-click adventure, choose-your-own adventure style of game from Don't Nod. Don't Nod is also the same developer as Life is Strange, so you can kind of see that there's a little bit of a pedigree there as far as this style of game. And it's pretty much the same thing, where you get to make verbal choices in dialogue and in actions that kind of somewhat tailor the way that the story unfolds, except this time instead of 5 episodes, it's only 3, and they were initially all released within the span of 3 weeks. They didn't wait too much of a long time. They didn't wait like a month or a month and a half in between episodes. It was literally just week to week to week, kind of like a TV show. And it was just over 3 weeks. So 3 episodes of Tell Me Why. Each one kind of averages at around 2.5 to 3 hours. It took me about the average of like 3 hours of each episode. So it was only about a 9-hour long game. Obviously, all episodes are out by now. And it tells the story of these twins. God, what were they? Ronan twins. Ronan? Yeah, Ronan twins. Who live in this Alaskan town, and they're coming home to sell a house. Sell their old childhood house, except there's a bit of a dark secret kind of embedded inside of the house that they're gonna have to tackle head on. And that's kind of like the vague way of putting the story. There's an awful lot of other details that reviews have already been kind of out there as far as who the twins are, what their backstory is, and what kind of connection they have with each other, and what kind of connection they have to the house and to that past story. I'm gonna keep it vague just in case, because this game is right now it's available on Game Pass all throughout June. Because it was Pride Month, it was actually pretty much free across the board. I think you could download it for free on almost every platform that it was available on, predominantly PC and Xbox. I don't think it's free anymore, but it's still technically available through Game Pass, so if you do happen to be a member of that subscription service, you can still check it out. So I know it's a little too late to kind of put that out there as a form of plug, but it's also one of the reasons as to why I played it, to kind of end Pride Month on a high note, and think to myself, okay, there's no better time to play this game than on the last couple of days of Pride Month. And so played it. Having been a guilty pleasure fan of Life is Strange, I thought to myself, okay, let's see what Don't Nod did as far as kind of advancing their tech, advancing into a much more mature story. And that's one of the strengths about Tell Me Why, is that you can instantly tell how they kind of polished up their engine, polished up their character models. Everything just looks a whole lot more pristine. Still a little bug that we're still running at 30 frames, not 60. But outside of that, everything just looks a whole lot cleaner from a design standpoint. It definitely has a much more photorealistic art style than Life is Strange. Because Life is Strange, if you think about it, has kind of a more pastel-y kind of oil painting kind of look to the characters, and so the way that they're drawn, the way they kind of come across, the way that the environments and the town of Arcadia Bay is kind of painted. Whereas with Delos, the fictional area here in Alaska, they're going for a much more grounded, for a realistic approach, and that kind of also mirrors the story itself. It's meant to be a much more mature, straightforward and streamlined direction for the Life is Strange developers. And because of that, it's able to take on a much more grounded and mature story that feels initially much more focused, much more nuanced, and I was really digging that, especially because of the way that the story was able to anchor some of the characteristics of these twins. One in particular, Tyler. Without going into detail, only because, like I said, some of these publications and reviewers out there have already mentioned this. It's right at the beginning of the game, so it's not a major spoiler, but just in case I didn't know about it, so just in case, I'm not gonna say it, but Tyler has a characteristic about him that is handled very, very well. It's one of the, like I said, one of the most compelling and nuanced ways that I've seen this be treated in a game that I'm like, yo, this is this is legit. Like, I would definitely say this as being one of the core strengths of the game. And so that's why, as I mentioned in a quick blurb on Twitter and social media and a Discord server, that's why little patches of still that signature don't nod, Life is Strange corny dialogue, and I don't want to say cringy moments, but super like cheeky and very saturatedly happy moments kind of stand out a little as a little corny, as a little cheesy from time to time. There's a mini game in particular where you have to like shoot these stuffed animals versus your opponent, and the dialogue that's exchanged as well as the mini game itself. Like I said, it teeters on the corny when you just had a couple of characters kind of talk about something that's actually rather hefty as far as subject material. Which leads me to my other little issues, that though that aspect of Tyler was handled beautifully, as well as the core story, the core mystery that they're trying to unfold, there's a couple of other little facets of the game that I feel like it started to kind of go down the checkbox of as far as mature subject matter, that I'm like, yo, these days, just talking about some of the things that go down in this game is subject for demonetization, especially when you get towards the end with like this twist that was pretty decent. It wasn't bad, but there is a little bit of a leap in logic as far as what goes down with some of the characters, what some of the characters were able to kind of turn away from or turn ahead to, that I'm like, nah, a sensible person would not turn their head. They would have said something by now. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a little bit of suspension of disbelief in order to buy into some of the twists and turns that the story wants you to kind of go along with. So that's, and it's funny because these qualms that I'm having would fit a little easier in a world like Life is Strange because of how corny and tongue in cheek that that atmosphere in Arcadia Bay and in those games are. That when you see it kind of happening in a game like Tell Me Why, where, like I said, stuff is meant to be a bit more grounded and nuanced, it doesn't fit. You know what I mean? To me, it stuck out. And because of that, that's why, like, the pacing was kind of going here and there, that I was like, okay, that was a little weird, and I don't know how I feel about some of the choices that these characters are making, and I'm also not certain about the choices that I'm making, because one strength that I'll have to give points over to Life is Strange for is also some of the choices that you make actually affecting the course of the story and the course of some characters still being alive versus some being in different places when you load up the second or third or fourth episode. I felt none of that playing through Tell Me Why. There was not a single moment where I was like, is this going to affect the other episode? Because then we get, and plus there's not a whole lot of room to really work with, considering that there's only 3 episodes. You know what I'm saying? By the time I got to episode 2 and I noticed that some of the choices that I made in episode 1 didn't really matter or affect the grand scheme of things, I was like, well, I get the feeling that that's pretty much how it's going to be across the board. With that, and the only exceptions would be these fork in the road, so you have to choose one thing over another in a very interesting and captivating way that plays into the mechanics that the game has as far as choose your own adventure type of thing, and what makes these twins unique as far as their connection and how it plays into that. I was like, all right, that's actually kind of clever, kind of cool, especially when it ties into the theme of memory, the theme of how sometimes we think we remember something a specific way, and then it takes somebody else to tell us, actually, that's not really how it played out. And I love that the game was able to treat that and handle that with care. It's just that as far as a gameplay mechanic, that's where shit got a little shallow. As far as like, well, you're not really giving me an agency over these choices. Life is Strange was able to do this a lot better than Tell Me Why. So overall, it was still a satisfying game to, like I said, end Pride Month on, but albeit heavily flawed, that I would say Don't Nod still has a ways to go to perfect the choose your own adventure game in the future. So, and even though Tell Me Why still had its problems, still, I'm still, on the radar for checking out any kind of future endeavors from Don't Nod that will be able to, kind of still play into this niche, into this demographic, and it hasn't dissuaded me at all from wanting to check out Life has Changed True Colors, the third game. So I'm still on track on trying that out. So if you happen to have Game Pass, I still recommend trying out Tell Me Why, at least over the course of a weekend, because like I said, it's not a very long play. And if it ever comes about to being free again for the different platforms, regardless of whether you have Game Pass, I still suggest that you guys check it out. And shortly after beating that, I started playing Fable 2. Yes, Fable, the Fable games, the original Fable classic games. I've already played the first one some time ago. It was what was it, the anniversary edition, which was meant to be the much more cleaned up version, with like some refined visuals, refined mechanics, etc. But it has been quite a while, and considering that I still have 2 games left in the trilogy, warming up to that eventual reboot / predecessor that they're currently working on, I thought to myself, okay, let's try to get these games done because they are still technically part of the Game Pass backlog, and there's no telling at what point does Microsoft finally say, okay, we're pulling the Fable games off of the service. Hope you guys played them, and take care now. So I didn't want to risk that happening, and because of that, I was like, all right, let's load up Fable 2 after Tell Me Why, so that I can at least get more out of the Game Pass backlog done. And so I want to say, initially I was going to say I'm about halfway through, but actually the last time I played, let's just say that one of the characters has said the famous words, whatever you want to get done, go and get it done, because once you go through with this next thing, there's no turning back. And I'm like, oh, really? Are we there? And I went ahead and looked it up. I mean, I didn't spoil myself as far as like story details or whatever, but I did that thing that I sometimes like to do, which is to look up a walkthrough and only go to the table of contents. So don't actually look up specific details, but just look at the table of contents just to kind of get a context as far as mission names and things like that of where you're at in the story, where you are in the progress. If there's no like progress bar or percentage or whatever in the game, which there really isn't. There's a stats logbook that tells you how long you've been playing and how many quests you've completed, but nothing concrete as far as the story development. And so I took it to a walkthrough to see exactly where I was at, and sure enough, I'm kind of at the end of the main story. So it's possible that this next session that I play, I might finally be able to beat it. So I'm not going to go into too much detail as to how I feel about the overall game and what it's all about. I might actually save that for next week's episodes, so that way I can give you guys my final impressions on Fable 2, along with other games I'm playing in between now and then, one of which might just be the game Carrion, however you pronounce it, where you play like a meat sack or something like that, like this meat monster going around killing dudes. The only reason why, though, is because unfortunately they did announce recently that on July 15th, that game will be leaving Game Pass, and it was part of my backlog. So got to get that done, as well as maybe at least one other game, and then I'll finally move on from the Xbox over to either the Switch and try to get Lego Star Wars done, or on the PlayStation 5, Sifu finally gets played. I don't know. We shall see. Especially with this next little announcements, got me thinking about this year's games and how much I need to get them played and need to get them done. So with Fable 2, initial impressions, definitely a step up over the first game so far. I was a little concerned at the beginning because it was a little bit on the slow side as far as like getting the mechanics down, getting to the tutorial of how to like interact with objects and move the character around. But once the inciting incident gets out of the way and motivates the character for a thirst for vengeance, that's where I was like, oh, okay, now we're cooking with gasoline, and the momentum definitely picks up. There's much more combat. It's a little bit more intuitive than I remember the first game being. It introduces combos and being able to like chain moves and fight moves and power spells and things like that I'm like, okay, yeah, it's a significant improvement. Wish it was a little better connected to the first one, because it does that thing of certain sequels where even though it's called a sequel, it takes place so far into the future and it's a little disenfranchised from the first that I'm like, well, you could technically play, in my eyes, I don't know about others, but in my eyes, I feel like you can play Fable 2 without playing Fable 1, and so far I'm under the pretense, unless I'm proven wrong, once I get to it, I think Fable 3 is probably going to be no different. You're going to be able to just jump into it without needing to play Fable 2, but we'll see. We'll see how Fable 2 ends. And so So far, I'm having actually quite an awful lot of it's so much fun that I'm genuinely surprised that I'm at the end of the main story, even though I did read that the story, if you only do the main story and just beeline it, you're only looking at about like 12 or 13 hours, nothing too crazy. Um, I do feel like I've spent that amount of time, but the reason why I find it so shocking is because I haven't been doing just the main story. I have been doing a good amount of side missions. I think one of the reasons why I'm able to expedite a lot of the process is because another significant thing that I noted that I thought to myself, okay, this is instantly better than the first game, is this sprint feature that the character has where you hold down the A button and this guy is hauling at my character is hauling ass like everywhere. Even areas where I can't fast travel to and I have to walk to, he doesn't walk. He jogs and runs like a motherfucker and there's no stamina meter either, so I'm like, all right, hold this down, and it doesn't really take long to get to places. So because of that, traversal is a lot smoother. He still has his moments. The mechanics still feel a little dated from time to time, where contact hits are not met. You know, I'm hitting the A button trying to open a treasure chest, and he's not opening it. So because I'm not directly in front of the chest, little things like that. You know, he's not vaulting over an edge because I have to face it completely forward as opposed to being at an angle. So a couple of things here and there, some jagged edges as far as how long it's been since the game's initial release, but overall, I would say Fable 2 is a significant improvement over the first game as far as, like I said, quest design. There's a lot of like compelling side quests. There's an awful lot of filler stuff too that I looked at the description of and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that because it's just gonna be, oh, go get me these things and then I'll reward you. And I'm like, well, I'm already kind of leveled up and OP'd, you know, with my stats and my boosters, so you have a nice day. So outside of that, though, I'm actually thoroughly enjoying my time with Fable 2, but because I'm already practically at the end, I'm going to reserve some much more concrete and formal thoughts for next week's episode, along with my hopefully review of Carrion, as well as probably one other game, because I do hear that Carrion is also a little bit of a short game. It's like 5.5 hours long, so might be able to squeeze something else in there as well. All right, enough. Let's talk about the big news. There was a part of me that was flip-flopping back and forth between wanting to wait until the very end of this, but no, I gotta talk about this. All right, this is one of the reasons why I waited. Well, one of the happy accidents as to why I waited to get this episode of the podcast. A little bit on the late side, outside of the stuff that I disclosed in the intro for the July, health issues, concerns, things like that, whatever. God of War Ragnarok officially has a release date, specifically November 9th, 2022. But this didn't come without its own little caveats that I'll get into in a little bit. This is the official IGN article. God of War Ragnarok is officially launching on November 9th for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Following rumors about a delay in 2023 and reassurances from the developers, the sequel to 2018's God of War reboot is indeed set to arrive this year. The news was accompanied by a short new CG trailer titled Father and Son, which shows off Kratos and Atreus fighting off multiple threats, including an absolutely enormous wolf. I saw this trailer, it's only about 30 minutes, and it is in fact a pre-rendered CG trailer that doesn't have any of that gameplay. It's that traditional Sony trailer you sometimes get with some of their games where you can tell it's not the game. It's just like a pre-rendered thing. They do that with all of their first-party titles. They did it with Last of Us. They did it with Spider-Man. They even did it with the first God of War. And so they did it again here. But I'm praying to God that there's no false advertisement happening here if it means we're going to be able to either fight or let alone ride that giant dire wolf that shows off at the end of the trailer. Please tell me we're going to be able to do that to some capacity. Hell, I'll even take a fucking quick time event if it means that the dire wolf is going to be shown off in its full-blown scale. But at the same time, I would prefer it to be a full-blown boss fight. And then even better, your reward is that you get to drive around, so to speak, drive around in the dire wolf. That would be amazing. But then the article continues, incidentally, that wolf might well be Fenrir, who in Norse mythology is the son of Loki. If you've played the last game in the series, that's complicated idea, which is true. I mean, not to, bring things kind of in a debatable fashion because of the way that people are feeling kind of a certain way like by the MCU, not only because of traditional Norse mythology, but if you guys have seen Thor Ragnarok, the movie, the MCU movie, Fenrir was in that movie as well. Remember, he was the giant wolf that Hulk is fighting? So he's embedded into the Norse mythology, the Norse culture. So that's not a stretch. Sony also announced that pre-orders will open on July 15th and showed off 4 separate editions of the game, including one with a full replica of Thor's Mjolnir. And I'll talk about that right now in a second. After being announced for a 2021 release, the return of Kratos and Atreus was eventually delayed into 2022, apparently because of a surgery undergone by lead voice actor Christopher Judge. Previous reports, including IGN's own sources, said the game was originally set to launch in September, but was pushed back to November. And there's a little bit more of the conversation surrounding the backstory of the game, but otherwise that's pretty much the gist of it. So November 9th, set release date for God of War Ragnarok. We're at July, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at 4 months out. Can they hit it? I would say possibly, but there's still a slight little fraction that it could be pushed. Now, the fact that they did, in fact, not only announce this date, but also gave us a pre-order date that's going to be going up, as well as collector's editions with full-blown unboxing videos by the voice actor behind Thor and one of the art directors, as well as, like I said, a breakdown of what's going to be included inside in the unboxing video, as well as these graphics that's pretty much showcasing it on the product listings. It kind of leans on the side that, yeah, maybe, just maybe, they'll be able to hit that November 9th release date. And don't get me wrong, there's a part of me that wants this collector's edition. I actually already have the collector's edition for the first God of War, so I would feel a little naked if I don't at least try to get, maybe not the full-blown Jotnar, I think it's called Jotnar edition, but at least the collector's edition that's kind of like in the intermediary of all these different versions. So at 10 a.m. Eastern, that's the part that hurts me, Eastern, so 7 a.m. Pacific here. July 15th, pre-orders for God of War Ragnarok will be going live, and that includes the launch edition, which is basically the core standard version of the game for PS4 or PS5, the digital deluxe edition, obviously all digital with a couple of little digital bonuses thrown in for pre-ordering or bundled in there. I think it's like $10 additional. And then you have the collector's edition, which is going to have, like I said, a 16-inch Mjolnir replica, a set of dwarven die, what does that say? 2 little like carvings. They're kind of similar to the carvings that came in the original God of War Collector's Edition. And then, of course, for me, my personal favorite, the Steelbook display case. The Jotnar edition is pretty much going to include all of this, as well as let me see if I could read it here. Because I'm going through all the digital stuff, then I'm trying to look up the Jotnar edition. Here we go. Jotnar edition will also come with a 7-inch vinyl record with music by Bear McCreary, the Falcon, Bear, and Wolf pin set, the legendary Draupnir ring, and Brock's dice set, and then an Yggdrasil cloth map. That's going to have a lot of like little Easter eggs and stuff like that have to do with the game. So a couple of additional bonus physical trinkets, as well as all of the physical and digital stuff that the collector's edition entails. Now, I don't see any kind of pricing listed for those collector's editions. I would have liked to have gotten some kind of disclosure on that, but it looks like we're going to have to be waiting until the day of these pre-orders going live, which is roughly in about 9 days to figure that out. But if past collector's editions say anything, I would probably imagine that the collector's edition, the one that's kind of like in the middle, is going to be probably about 200, and then that Jotnar edition is probably going to be about 300, if I had to take a wild guess. Now, there is some controversy, unfortunately, a couple of pieces of controversy surrounding this announcement. One is specific to the collector's editions, and that is that despite all of this physical goodness, they couldn't throw in the goddamn game disc. There are no game discs with these physical collector's editions. There is a voucher that's going to have the code to download the game. And this is not necessarily anything new. In fact, I would argue that these collector's editions, as nice as they look, especially with that Mjolnir replica, they pretty much look one-to-one, kind of identical to that of the Horizon Forbidden West collector's editions, which also, unfortunately, also performed the cardinal sin of not having the physical discs for the game. And I gotta be honest, it's a little shady. It's a little shady that they're charging all this money, but you can't throw in a physical disc to actually hold, especially when you're throwing in a steelbook case. Why bother throwing in a steelbook case if you're not gonna throw in the disc itself as well? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my only actual problem with this whole collector's edition debacle that's seemingly becoming a bit of a pattern, and it's probably going to be the new norm. I should probably get used to it. I can complain about it, but unfortunately, I don't think any of that is going to change any of these weird practices that they're having with the collector's editions and the Jotnar edition, that they're not going to be including discs, and it also pains me that there's also no special edition. So you have the launch edition, like with Forbidden West, where you had the collector's editions, you had the standard edition, and then right in the middle, you had like a $90 version that came with a mini art book and the steelbook and the disc for the game, and that was it. And that was like $90. And that would have been awesome. A nice little in between that. It still gives me the steelbook, but it doesn't go above and beyond to break the bank as far as having a very pricey collector's edition that's going to take an awful lot of space. But it's also going to still give me the disc, still give me the steelbook, kind of make me happy. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like they're going to be doing that with God of War Ragnarok, and it's a bummer. It's a huge, huge bummer. That's controversy number one. Controversy number two doesn't have to do with the collector's editions, but rather the release date and the fact that a similar date-related announcement was made the exact same time that God of War Ragnarok got its release date. As a bit of a companion piece news segment, Forspoken has been delayed to January 2023. This is an official statement from the Forspoken Twitter account with the little statement that they published here, and I'm going to go ahead and read it. As a result of, quote, as a result of ongoing discussions with key partners, we have made the strategic decision to move the launch date of Forspoken to January 24th, 2023. All game elements are now complete, and development is in its final polishing phase. We would like to thank you for your continued support and patience on this journey. Your excitement for the game inspires us every day, and we cannot wait to share more about about Forspoken with you later this summer. Official statement from Luminous Productions, developer and Square Enix publisher. Yeah. And sure enough, I'm reading the comments on that tweet, and pretty much everyone is in agreement. Something tells me that this is in some way connected to the God of War Ragnarok release date publication. Because notice the key phrase here at the beginning. As a result of ongoing discussions with key partners. This is a PlayStation exclusive. PlayStation 5 exclusive. As is God of War. There is very little to convince me that someone at Sony, possibly Jim Bryan, went over to Square Enix and says, hey, you gotta push this. Because it really did seem like Forspoken was kind of finished, and they're even kind of admitting it in the statement here, saying it's almost like they're sounding a little jaded. All game elements are now complete, and development is in its final polishing phase, meaning the game is done, and they're just cleaning up some bugs and little, minor things here and there. And that's already after one initial delay from, April all the way to October. That's a whole 6 months, almost a full half a year. And you mean to tell me you're going to push it an additional 3 months? But that was a result of ongoing discussions with key partners? Yeah, someone got talked to. And it's a shame. It's a shame that it is, as they're calling it here, we made the strategic decision. there's very little here to convince someone that this isn't in some way connected to the God of War Ragnarok release date. It's gotta be. PlayStation said there's too much. It's too much. If we want, if we have people out there who are very conservative with their money, and they're only going to be spending $60 or $70 on one game, we would rather have it be on something established that's God of War Ragnarok as opposed to a brand new IP like Forspoken, excuse me. Especially one that still has yet to prove itself like Forspoken. And so because of that, Forspoken is officially no longer a 2022 game either. If you want to look at it that way. I mean, it's January, sure, but officially it is now a 2023 game, not 2022. So that gets removed from my list of games to play this year officially. I can't say it's a huge bummer because it was a game that I looked at and said, okay, it's on my radar, but I'm not supremely hyped or stoked for it. I would rather, it's a good business move on Sony's part because they're in some ways kind of correct, because I was personally much more hyped for God of War Ragnarok than I was for Forspoken, and I feel like they recognize that as well. So my condolences to the people who were hyped for Forspoken, but this is definitely a smart business decision on paper. You know what I'm saying? And so, despite the fact that I'm still stoked for God of War, it's a shame that a casualty here had to be Forspoken getting bumped out of the fall gaming season. And frankly, it is what it is. Damn, I feel like I need a cigarette after that. You notice how much stuttering I was doing there because I just didn't really know how much more that I could possibly add to that news story, apart from the fact that one game is finally concrete, set in stone to be coming out this year, while another had to be pretty much sacrificed like a lamb on over to next year, or at least a month into next year. And it's a bit of a bummer, but frankly, that's just how some of this business goes, because even though the gaming industry does provide video games, it is, after all, an industry that needs to prove how it kind of pushes itself forward, while at the same time still being a business at the end of the day, and making sure that these companies are doubling down on what works and moving on from what doesn't, or what is kind of past its prime and have to be recognized as sheer nostalgia. I'm utilizing all these traits to kind of segue into my next somber story that I did kind of want to get into, which is that if you were one of the folks that was kind of aspiring to get a new Sly Cooper game or Infamous game from Sucker Punch, then unfortunately I got some bad news for you. It does look like, in fact, the company Sucker Punch is moving on from those properties. This is the article over from IGN. Since Sucker Punch's formation nearly 25 years ago, the studio has developed multiple beloved series like Infamous and Sly Cooper. Now, as the studio shifts its focus towards a new IP, these franchises won't be receiving new entries in the near future. In a statement published on the studio's website, Sucker Punch thanked fans for the support and laid out some of its plans for the future. I'm going to go ahead and stop reading the IGN article and just read the full-blown statement from Sucker Punch in their official blog, kind of addressing this entire situation, this whole debacle here. So starting from the top, this was published on July 1st, 2022, so it's a little bit of a older story, but it's one that still kind of resonated with me because I did play not every single Sly Cooper game, but a couple of them, but I did in fact play pretty much all of the Infamous games, including the DLCs. So there is a little bit of a stake in there that did kind of resonate with me a little bit as far as reading the statement. So it starts off by saying, as we approach 25 years since Sucker Punch first opened, we're proud to look back at the legacy of characters and stories we've created, from Rocket Robot on Wheels to Sly Cooper and Infamous, and most recently, Ghost of Tsushima. As our games continue to grow in scale and complexity, they require the full attention of our studio. With our focus on our current project, we have no plans to revisit Infamous or Sly Cooper right now, and no other studio is currently working on the projects related to those franchises either. These characters are very special and near and dear to our hearts. So while we never say never to reopening those doors down the road, for now, there are no Infamous or Sly Cooper games in development. We know many people still play these games even today, so we'll be performing maintenance on Infamous 2 UGC servers soon to move them to a new home that will keep them up and running a bit longer. We will eventually need to sunset these. Jesus Christ, the way that they're adding the term to this. but want to keep them running for as long as possible for players who are still active. We're also working, and this is interesting actually, we're also working to put Cole's Legacy DLC for Infamous Second Son, which was previously only available as part of the Collector's Edition, on PlayStation Store in all territories for anyone who missed it. Thank you to everyone for an incredible 24 plus years of support. Your love and appreciation are what fuel us to keep making new games and new worlds, and we look forward to continuing to bring new and exciting ideas to life for many years to come. We're not ready to talk about whatever might be next, but we hope you'll keep following us whenever we're ready to share more. From Sucker Punch Productions. So, bit of a bittersweet statement to say that they're moving on from, again, two very beloved series, one of which, like I said, I have a stronger affinity for, which is the Infamous franchise. I played the first one on the PS3 Slim, and then Infamous 2. I had to buy the DLC separately because this was after the fact I got the core game. And then Infamous Second Son, even on PlayStation 4, even though I think I line up with an awful lot of the consensus that it's probably the weaker of the series. It's still a good time, and the DLC was also a good standalone as far as like a standalone story to be able to match the production value behind Infamous Second Son and still what Sucker Punch was able to delve into. But of course, I loved Ghost of Tsushima, so much so that it was preliminarily my game of the year for 2020, since I've kind of developed a pseudo retraction by swapping Ghost of Tsushima and Hades for spots. So now Hades is kind of more so my game of the year, and Ghost of Tsushima is like my number 2, my runner-up. But they're both equally great games. And that's also one of the bigger takeaways from the statement, is that as harsh as it is to have to walk away from those properties of potentially, allegedly, never seeing Sly Cooper or Infamous again. I gotta be honest, as much as I love Infamous, between the two, it's Sly Cooper, the one that I'm like, well, it would be nice if Sly Cooper can kind of get the Ratchet and Clank treatment, where they can kind of maybe remake one of the first games to kind of reintroduce it to a new generation with new mechanics, new, more contemporary mechanics that feel at home on something like the PlayStation 5, to kind of make it look like a Pixar movie as far as the animation style and the actual quality of the animation, as far as like hair follicles and particle effects and things like that, and then maybe introduce a brand new sequel that will then stem from that new timeline, and then, like I said, give it that revamp that Ratchet and Clank pretty much kind of set up for itself with the 2016 remake as well as the 2020 sequel Rift Apart. With that said, there is a portion in the middle of the statement where they're pretty much saying, hey, you know how Ubisoft and all these different companies that have like this blanket brand name, but they have different teams like Rockstar North, Rockstar Vancouver, whatever the hell, and then Ubisoft's got Ubisoft Montreal, Ubisoft this, Ubisoft that, and they have all these teams that are kind of stretched apart, which is why you get so many frequent games that have all of this focus just kind of stretched, and that's why you end up with games that have maybe great things about it, but also some not so good things about it. They're kind of hinting at this video game development practice. At least that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from that statement right there in the middle, where they're pretty much saying, hey, you know those production companies that have all those different teams, so they kind of, in a way, become they pretty much turn into jack of all trades, masters of none. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting of them pretty much illustrating or referencing to. They don't want to become that. They don't want to become that team where they have all these little mini teams working on different projects, like, oh, the remake of this, and Capcom is actually another perfect example of this, where they have a team dedicated to the more contemporary Resident Evils like Village and Biohazard, but then they have their own team that focused on some of the remakes. Like, apparently the team that's working on the remake for Resident Evil 4 is the team that worked on Resident Evil 2, but didn't work on Resident Evil 3, and that was a different team. But look at how Resident Evil 3 turned out. RE3 remake could have had the quality of RE2, but they had to give it to a B team. Sucker Punch is pretty much saying, we don't want B teams and A teams and C teams. We want just one big, solid S tier team. And we want all the team members to focus on that singular brand new IP. A brand new IP that sounds like it's not even a Ghost of Tsushima sequel. But to be honest, as much as I loved Ghost of Tsushima, I'm fine. I'm fine. We got the Iki expansion, which I have yet to play. So I still have content lingering out there as far as Ghost of Tsushima is involved. And so to see a brand new IP that's harnessing all of the team's focus and attention and quality and work ethic, I would gladly take over having another team go through, like I said, the motions of Rockstar, the motions of Ubisoft, of all these, different subsidiaries saying, oh, well, this team is working on this team is working on that. And then, like I said, they become masters of none. And ultimately, that's the takeaway that I kind of got from this statement. And again, it's bittersweet because on the one hand, no more Infamous, at least not for the foreseeable future. Like they even put it, never say never. But at the same time, it also means that whatever they're working on next is bound to be quality. And speaking of Resident Evil 4 Remake dropping in 2023, it looks like yet another 2023 is pretty much shaping up to be the year of game remakes. I mean, didn't we just have one? I think 2020 we had we had Final Fantasy VII Remake, but that was essentially about it. Now it's becoming remake after remake after remake. Getting just a little bit nervous. I understand that the technology is advancing enough to where we can get a lot of these like underrated gems or hidden gems or whatever, that polished up treatment, but at the same time, I'm hoping this doesn't deter from any potential quality or prospects or ideas for brand new IPs to get shelved in response to this. So before I get ahead of myself as far as what my opinion is on this, basically a Lollipop Chainsaw remake, it has officially been announced by one of the producers, no less. So this is the article from IGN. After a tease last month, we have confirmation Lollipop Chainsaw will receive a full remake in 2023. Announced by publisher Dragami Games, which is led by the original game's producer Yoshimi Yasuda, the game will arrive worldwide next year, although a formal title or platforms have not yet been announced. It will be developed by a combination of development staff from the original version, including Yasuda's producer and new development staff from Dragami Games. The game will aim to recreate the original, but Yasuda explained that the game remake will feature a couple of key differences. Due to the power of new gen hardware, the new game will feature a more realistic approach to graphics. Less welcome for fans will be the news that music licensing issues means that, as opposed to the first game's 16 licensed tracks, in the remake, aside from a few licensed tracks, the soundtrack will consist of new music. Yasuda teased that the game will make some kind of return last month to celebrate its 10th anniversary. The cult action games was released in 2012 and saw game director Suda51, movie director James Gunn, and Yasuda collaborate to present the story of Juliet Starling, a high school cheerleader caught amid an outbreak of zombies. And then there's a little bit more information about creating the original, etc., etc. However, an update did get published to the article. I think it was literally just yesterday. And the update is pretty much Suda51 and James Gunn saying, hey, we ain't involved in this. We're not for it, but we're not against it either. We're just letting you know we're not involved. We were never contacted. We're not attached to this. So the update says, co-creator Suda51 and James Gunn have both confirmed that they are not part of the upcoming Lollipop Chainsaw remake. On Twitter, Gunn said, I have heard about it for the first time from Suda a couple of weeks ago. Suda followed up saying, neither Gunn nor I am involved in this project at all, and Suda's developer, Grasshopper Manufacturer, has nothing to do with the development or anything. Gunn later tweeted that he neither endorses nor condemns the project, but wanted to clear up who is and isn't involved. And both of them confirmed this on Twitter. This is interesting. It's interesting. Here's the thing. It doesn't really disappoint me because unlike the story that I just read about Sucker Punch no longer making Infamous games or whatever, I had a stake in that because I played the original Infamous games, and knowing that there's no future there for the foreseeable time coming up here, it's kind of a bittersweet moment. I never played Lollipop Chainsaw. I didn't play it when it came out in 2012. Since then, I haven't played it. I don't even know if it's in my backlog. I don't think it's part of my registry on Xbox or anything like that, so I have no real way to play the original right now. I think it goes on sale very frequently, either on Steam or on Xbox, so technically I could wait for a sale and pull the trigger on it. Now, knowing that there's a remake, initially when I saw the headline, I thought to myself, okay, well now I can probably just wait for the remake. But here's the thing about Lollipop Chainsaw. By the name, by the visuals, by the story, and specifically the design of our main character here, Juliet Starling. This is quintessentially an early 2010s game. It is very much an early 2010s game. You get what I'm saying? As in a game that I don't know could even be made, let alone remade, in the 2020s. With the way that social climate is, the way that they chose their words carefully here, saying that the producer wants to make a remake that has an improvement on graphics. I think it's code for like, hey, just so you know, this Juliet is not gonna look the way that particular way that the original does. I couldn't care, but I know that there's gonna be a debacle. Just trust me. When the new design, I don't care who says what. Like I said, I don't have a stake in it. I personally don't care, but I know for a fucking fact that when they reveal the new look of this brand new version of Juliet in the remake, there's going to be a discourse on Twitter, on social media about whether or not this was a warranted remake, or people are going to boycott saying, oh, they're messing up the original vision. I just read a statement here saying that there's not going to be as much music from that original as possible. And to top it off, Gun and Suda51, two of the original creators, are no longer attached or being a part of it. And they're saying that they're not endorsing it. Granted, they're not condemning it either, but they're just kind of looking at it saying, no, why do that? I don't know. There's enough smoke here for me to kind of sense that there's a fire nearby. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not like Dead Space where you got people from the original, except for the original creator, Glenn Schofield, working on it. There's not enough goodwill to be like, oh yeah, this is a remake. This is a legitimate thing. Now, to play devil's advocate, we do have some inevitable changes coming to the RE4 remake from the original that's probably going to remove a little bit of that camp. But at least there's a pedigree. There's something that has already been proven right, and that is, that is in the RE2 remake. The RE2 remake is so far my favorite Resident Evil. I've said this already on the podcast, I've said this in videos, and I've said this in person. And so there's an established kind of proving ground there to say that, hey, there's enough for us to look forward to in an RE4 remake. So for a Lollipop Chainsaw remake, I gotta be honest, I really don't see myself getting enticed by this whatsoever. And that's not me trying to be like, oh, they're gonna dress her up, they're gonna cover her up. No, it's not even about that. It's just the fact that there's not enough of a pedigree or a lineage there for me to be like, is this necessary? Could there have been assets or workload, of these developers, of these artists put towards a brand new IP, like work on something new? And maybe, just maybe, that's the angle that Gun and Suda51 were probably looking at and going, yeah, why not make your own thing? Why not make the original? But instead, they're opting to just simply remake it. And so far, I have little to go on for me to get hyped for a Lollipop Chainsaw remake. That I'm either going to have to just wait for some kind of trailer or some kind of deep dive into the gameplay of this 2023 remake, or pretty much just settle for the original when it goes on sale. And I got two more last stories here to kind of conclude the podcast. Things that I honestly was thinking about cutting out, but realizing that there's no Ms. Marvel review this week due to the delays and the scheduling and trying to catch up with it with the girlfriend, I figured, you know what, let's go ahead and leave these in there. They're more so on the verge of being opinion pieces, but at the same time, there's some factual stuff in there to kind of comment on. So the first one is one that I kind of already started seeing the writing on the wall, which is that pretty much Xbox has tangentially run out of Xbox 360 games to put out there as far as their games with gold service. So it's funny, I just now realized that almost all the articles that I'm referencing in today's podcast are provided by IGN, because that's frankly where I saw them first. So I saved the URL links onto the Google Doc, and that's pretty much what happened there. But basically, over reporting from IGN, George Yang wrote this article, quote, Microsoft has announced that the Xbox Games with Gold program will no longer include Xbox 360 games starting in October. In an email to users as reproduced on Reddit, Microsoft says beginning October 1st, 2022, the monthly games provided to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and Xbox Live Gold members via Games with Gold will no longer include Xbox 360 titles. We have received the limit of our ability to bring 360 games to the catalog. However, Games with Gold will continue to include exciting Xbox One titles and exclusive savings each month. This will not impact any Xbox 360 games that you downloaded before October 2022. Any Xbox 360 titles that you redeem via Games with Gold before that time are yours to keep on your Xbox account, regardless of whether you continue your subscription. That is dope. Games with Gold usually contains 2 Xbox One games and 2 Xbox 360 games that subscribers can download for free each month. However, during some months, one of the 360 games is replaced with an original Xbox title, such as July 2021 did with Conquer Live and Reloaded. Whether the company substitutes the 2 Xbox 360 games with 2 additional Xbox One games or simply downsizes Games with Gold to just 2 Xbox One's titles is currently unknown. The article kind of continues on here, but you pretty much get the gist of it, is that they pretty much ran out of 360 games. And it's funny because it says right here very, I'm seeing some comments of people saying that this is very anti-gamer, and I'm like, how? Like, there's licenses. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't own the rights to every single 360 game. Like, they really ran out and they kind of, stood their ground for a really good while bringing 360 games. So now they either need to go far back enough on the well of Xbox titles with the original Xbox from like the early 2000s, or like the article says, either downsize to just being 2 Xbox One games and that's it, kind of like PlayStation does, or do 4, which I honestly doubt. I doubt they're going to go with this route. 4 Xbox One titles. And then some people in the comment section are recommending Series X titles. I think that's a little too high maintenance for them to do, for them to kind of give away. At that point, it's already kind of more or less cannibalizing into the Game Pass market, which leads me to my thoughts, which is that, frankly, I feel like Games with Gold should kind of sort of die. Maybe not anytime soon, like they shouldn't just abruptly pull the plug on it or anything like that, but it really is starting to feel like every time they put out new games with Gold, it's never appealing to me, at least for like the past damn near a year or so. I cannot remember the last time that there was an awesome looking game popping up on Games with Gold that either I didn't already have, didn't already play in the past, or isn't already part of Game Pass, or Game Pass Ultimate for that matter. So that's why I'm like, why is this thing still kind of alive? I mean, I kind of understand if people want like a in-between sort of thing where they only pay the $60 a year and they get the Games with Gold, they get the online connectivity and whatever, but they don't want to go the extra mile of doing Game Pass. But the value is just kind of like the value is just not there anymore. Really, like for the past, like I'm telling you, 7 or 8 months, almost every game that they've added to Games with Gold, I never heard of. It's usually a very obscure indie title that might as well be put on Game Pass. Really. Granted, like I said, I'm not an analyst. I don't know what the bottom line is here. I'm not an expert, but as a consumer, as a gamer, I would just save up the money and go the extra mile of trying to create some kind of payment plan or something like that to just get Game Pass Ultimate, because the value in Game Pass, it just completely dwarfs whatever they're able to throw over on Xbox Games with Gold. And now knowing that they're pretty much running out of 360 titles past October, there's very little incentive there, because like I said, their options are either going to have to be to just cut it to just 2 Xbox One titles and kind of start to mirror a little bit of the not old school, but the current PlayStation Plus basic tier, or as they're calling it, the essential tier, where you just get the 2 PS4 games, maybe 1 PS5 game, and sometimes that PS5 game is not even a full-on PS5 game. It's more like one of those cross-generation ones where it's kind of PS5, but it's also available in the PS4, and it's not the most next-gen title out there. Or they can double down and bring us 4 Xbox One titles, but I severely doubt that. I really, really, really doubt they're going to do that. In order to cut costs, I wouldn't be surprised if instead they decide to go with a cheaper route of just having those 2 games be very far. They would probably like retitle it or rebrand it as like, classic nostalgic titles, or Essentials list or something like that. But it ends up just being titles from the original Xbox One from like 2001, 2002, like Spider-Man 2 or whatever, just to kind of, like I said, like, wouldn't that be crazy if, like, after a while they're like, oh, Spider-Man 2, the movie, the game, now included on Games with Gold this month? I would say there might be potential there, but they're going to have to curate that list exponentially if they don't want to have, again, that similar kind of optics and those similar kind of effects that I'm starting to feel with Games with Gold recently, where a lot of the 360 titles I looked at and said, I never heard of that, and I don't even know if I want to play that. Granted, it's free. It doesn't hurt to at least add it to the account by hitting the download button and then uninstalling, just so that it could be part of the account and it's mine to keep, and whenever I want to download it, I can. So there's no harm, no foul there, but on the other side, as a looking at the consumer to business relationship, it just, Games with Gold just hasn't really been making all that much sense to me. But again, at the same time, it is a first world problem sort of thing, because I am a Game Pass member. I'm pretty much covered until, like, I think sometime in the summer of 2023, I'm covered with Game Pass. So there's also that extra bit of a luxury there. So I'm curious to hear if anybody else has, like, some opinions on that. And then moving on to our final story here, of course, one of our favorite companies, and I mean that both in the ironic and satirical sense, and previously genuine sense, Rockstar. Rockstar is in the news again, in a very I don't want to say cathartic, but in a very karma-driven sort of way, where Rockstar came forward and it's pretty much saying, hey, we wanted to give you guys more cool stuff, but y'all were complaining and not buying our product, and because of that, we can't deliver you more product. And I'm like, so you're blaming the consumer for being a consumer? I mean, that's kind of how it's starting to look like a little bit here. But as reported by IGN, Rockstar reportedly shelves Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4 remasters to focus on GTA 6 following the poor reception of the GTA Trilogy remake or remaster, whatever you want to call it. So once again, reported by Emilia Zollner over at IGN, Rockstar Games reportedly shelved planned remakes including Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4 to focus on the upcoming GTA 6. This is after Grand Theft Auto The Trilogy, the definitive edition, was released to negative reviews from critics and fans alike. According to a prominent leaker and reported by Kotaku, both Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto 4 remasters were on the table a few years ago, but Rockstar chose not to proceed with the projects in mind. However, according to Kotaku, these projects weren't fully canceled and could possibly see a return to development after GTA 6 releases. And this is basically a leaker over on Twitter by the name of Tez2, something like that. So basically the tweet reads, as per a reliable source with clear accuracy on Rockstar plans, remasters of GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption 1 were on the table a few years ago, but Rockstar chose not to proceed with the projects in mind. The poor reception of the Trilogy Definitive Edition might be a reason behind that decision. And that's just, like I said, that's just pure irony, considering that who's at fault for delivering a shitty definitive edition / remake? Rockstar. I mean, a lot of people were actually a little bit more receptive and open-minded to those definitive editions, especially when we saw those trailers where we're like, okay, yeah, the character models, the aesthetic, the design choice they went with those revamped versions of those character models may be a little off-putting and divisive, but the way that the environments were, for the most part, cleaned up didn't look all that bad until we got to, like, the rain, the rain particle effects and all that stuff. And then finally, when the games came out, yes, that's when people finally realized, yeah, these things don't run well. They objectively don't run well. And you can definitely feel how they were just kind of shut out by Rockstar to make a quick buck. And now they're saying, well, y'all didn't receive it. It's making it sound like Rockstar saying, you guys didn't receive it well, so I guess no GTA 4 remaster or Red Dead Redemption remaster for you. We're just going to keep working on GTA 6, and while we slowly work on that, we're just going to keep making money off of GTA Online. And yeah, it's very difficult to ignore or to not fall in line with what a lot of people also feel, which is that Rockstar is, I'm scared, man. I'm legitimately scared for Rockstar because I'm starting to get some strong EA vibes by the way that Rockstar has been conducting themselves, has been behaving themselves, where they've been riding super high and mighty on their laurels of their successes, that now they're starting to become tone deaf and full of themselves. They really are, and this definitive edition they launched last year was kind of indicative of that. And now to find out that they probably had, it's funny because they were like, oh, they were on the table years ago. I'm like, I feel like they were on the table as of like earlier this year, and then finally when they noticed that they didn't make demand back from that definitive edition of the trilogy, they were like, well, screw that. What's the point of doing that? And I don't know. Granted, if the way that they shut out this definitive edition was also going to be the same treatment that they would have given Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4, then maybe, just maybe, we may have dodged a bullet there. And I'd rather them just have, and granted, the article lists them as remakes as well as the leaker. Oh, no, the leaker says, this is where it gets just a tiny bit confusing because IGN calls them remakes, but then the leaker says remasters. Which one is it? Because they're very, very different things. A remaster is very different from a remake. A remake is from the ground up. And as noted a couple of times over this episode already, we're already getting a shit ton of remakes in 2023. RE4, Dead Space, Lollipop Chainsaw. Enough with the remakes. I'm curious to see if maybe the remakes thing is going to die off the same way that Battle Royale is slowly starting to die off as well. To the point where now, even Fortnite's recognizing that basic Battle Royales can't do it anymore, and that's why they got rid of the no build. They inducted the whole no build mode. So they're changing things up. And I'm hoping that the industry will start going in the direction where it's like a lot of people will start to vote with their wallets and be like, do I take a remake of a game that I wasn't a huge, I wasn't over the moon. I liked enough, but I wasn't, over the moon of enough to pay another like $60 or even worse, $70 this year, especially with the direction that we're going with as far as an economy, with gas prices going up, inflation going up, and all that stuff. People are starting to realize that, we need to start putting the money where it really needs to be and get our priorities straight. And sometimes if we're still gamers at heart and we know that we want to at least put a good, decent $70 aside, do we want those $70 to go towards a remake of a game that I technically already played decades ago and sure it's going to have the brand new technology, the brand new graphics and whatnot? Or do I go with a brand new project that is maybe inspired by that stuff, but it's technically a brand new IP with new mechanics, a whole new refreshing experience? That is how I feel right now about how to compare between the Callisto Protocol and the Dead Space remake. Right now, gun to my head, I would say Callisto Protocol, and I'm glad that that's the one that we're getting technically first before the Dead Space remake. I would most wholeheartedly put down the $70 stat for Callisto Protocol over the Dead Space remake. And I'm hoping that Rockstar will catch on to that sooner rather than later. Sure, GTA 6 is a sequel to their long-standing franchise, but at the very, very fucking least, it's technically a new game. It's not a remake, it's not a remaster or anything like that. It's a new game, and granted, it won't come out for some time, probably 2024, 2025, maybe even not until 2026, based on just how much they're raking in from that goddamn GTA Online. But at least I take solace in knowing that it's a brand new game. And if the cancellation of these projects means that at least their focus and attention is going towards a brand new game that at least will feel complete and have that quality, that premium quality and attention to detail that Rockstar has shown that they can do in the past, then that's all I ask for. I ask for a return to form of Rockstar because as of late, and even concurrently, they're starting to scare me. They're starting to scare me into them becoming the next EA, all right? And I don't want to see Rockstar going on Twitter and saying some stupid shit, just like EA recently did with their tweet that went viral for all the wrong reasons, which I didn't really want to talk about or discuss and call it as a news story. But basically, they try to hop on a trend, tweeting out, they're a 10, but they only play single-player games, pretty much taking a shot at single-player games. and, saying, if you're not playing multiplayer, then you're not a gamer. That's pretty much what they were insinuating. Thankfully, nothing more than I can already say that the internet didn't already flame them for over on Twitter as far as the replies and the ratios and all that stuff. So much so that so many articles already picked it up, and that's already a dead horse that I didn't want to continue beating or leave the ending of this podcast episode on. That about does it, guys. I know that it was predominantly news stories today, but like I said, there was no Ms. Marvel this week that I can kind of substantiate reviews on. But look forward to next week, where for sure I will give you guys reviews of episode 4 and 5, possibly episode 6 of Ms. Marvel, and also look for my review of Thor: Love and Thunder, because by the time you're probably listening to this, I will actually be in the theater checking the movie out, and then for sure next week I will have a much lengthier discussion. Don't think I'll dive into the spoilers necessarily. I don't know, it still might be a little bit too early for that, but I will definitely be doing a much more patient and much more nuanced review of Thor: Love and Thunder outside of quick social media impressions on Twitter, like a quick blurb on Twitter or a quick Instagram reel or story or TikTok or whatever the hell. Whatever short form kind of content or kind of review that I can gestate for Thor: Love and Thunder, I will definitely do a much more long form style of review on the podcast next week, for sure, guaranteed. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much for listening, and before I catch you guys next week, make sure to hit me up over on Twitter and on Instagram at DarkspiderDavid, all one word, as well as checking out the links in the description, where you'll find links for my website, the main YouTube channel that's dedicated to Batman and Spider-Man, with a complete overhaul and revamp on that channel, with brand new thumbnails, a brand new format to doing the reviews, a brand new style and aesthetic that I'm trying to do my research on right now, while at the same time kind of putting things together for a video essay that I've been meaning to do for a little while now. So hopefully I'll start the process of making that happen and seeing where that goes. But of course, links could also be found for the social medias in the description as well, for that Twitter, that Instagram, and whatnot. Otherwise, guys, take care, stay safe out there, stay humble, and I'll see you next week. Peace.